I have spent over $650,000 buying cars for my fleet from my Turo and private car rental business. And 3 of them in particular costing me more out of pocket than all of the rest combined. For context, I recently exited my business partnership that had over 60 plus cars in the rental fleet doing over $150,000 per month. The thing is, most of the cars on that fleet, I never owned. I manage them on the consignment model, which is essentially a property manager for vehicles. Now, of course, I did purchase some vehicles for the fleet. The 3 cars that I'm about to walk you through, these are cars that I purchased and make big mistakes on. They were mine. My capital, my signatures on the loans, and my tuition to the school of Turo of what not to buy. In this video, I'm gonna break down 3 different cars that were almost fatal mistakes to the business. What I paid, why I bought it, what actually happened, and the exact lessons that you need to steal from each one, so when you're starting your business, you don't repeat the same mistakes. Because every other Turo video on this platform pretty much just talks about the wins. Things like, this car makes me $4,000 a month, and all the other flexes, and of course, the dashboards on the good days. Nobody shows you the cars that are bleeding money on the lot right now. The ones that the algorithm hates, the ones that quietly destroyed my margins for over a year. Let's get into it. And one quick thing before we dive in. Although I am pro on starting and operating a private car rental business that you own, the reason that most people buying cars for Turo are losing money is not because Turo is saturated, that it's dead, or any other cope that you hear on Reddit or Facebook groups. It's because they're buying cars like a consumer and not an operator. A consumer would ask, is this car cool? Do I look good in it? Will renters want it? On the flip side, an operator is gonna ask, what's the all-in monthly cost on this car? What's the realistic occupancy? What is the average daily rate after fees? And what is the worst case repair bill and downtime? I made all 3 of these car buying mistakes when I was still treating Turo like a consumer instead of an operator running a business. So if you watch nothing else, watch the lessons at the end of each story because the lessons are worth more than the cars. Cool, let's get into car number 1. This one is what I'm gonna title as the car looked great on paper sort of purchase. The first car that I wanna talk about that I regret purchasing is a 2021 Mercedes AMG GTC Roadster. I know that's a mouthful. I paid about $95,000 for the car roughly 3 or 4 years ago, and on paper, the car looked perfect. Here was the math that I ran before I purchased the vehicle. I figured that the average daily rate in my market was gonna be somewhere around $400 a day. The realistic occupancy, because it is a nicer, more luxury vehicle, more for special occasion, was gonna be a little bit less than some economy cars, so I put that around 50%. My projected gross monthly income was gonna be somewhere around $6,000. The monthly payment on this car was around $1,800, and the insurance was almost $300, let's call it $275. That puts me at a monthly net profit of almost $4,000. That's a 218% monthly return on the vehicle before we account for any maintenance. This is for a car sitting in a parking lot and renting while I'm asleep. Went ahead, bought it the same week, but here's what the spreadsheet didn't tell me. I want to talk about the maintenance pattern on this vehicle, and the reason that it costed me so much money was not because of the labor or the parts cost, it was for something else that I'll go over at the end of it. The first 6 months on the car were actually completely fine, and the numbers were doing what I had projected, doing at least $6,000 a month gross. Then, right about after the 6-month mark, we had a renter complaining that the car was losing power when shifting gears or going to higher speeds. So, check engine light came on. We knew there was a maintenance issue. Took it into the shop. Turns out we need to replace the spark plugs. That was about a $2,000 job in itself. Then, just 1 or 2 months after, I can't remember specifically, the turbo went out on the car. Now, the car was under warranty, so all in all, it didn't cost us anything out of pocket, but the car was in the shop for 3 months, waiting on parts and waiting to be serviced. The car being in the shop for 3 months alone costed us almost $6,500 just in payments and insurance that we had to pay regardless whether the car rented or not. So we get the car out of the shop, it's running again for a couple of months, doing okay numbers, not particularly what we were projecting. It was hitting somewhere around the $4,000 gross mark, so we were still technically in profit for those months. But then we get a renter telling us that the top is stuck down. Boom, another problem With the AMG GT, we take it to Mercedes once again. Turns out there was some sort of clip broken. It wasn't a major issue, or so they thought. So at first they gave us like a week turnaround time. Again, this was covered by warranty. We thought everything was gravy. They ordered the part. They put it in. Turns out they had to end up replacing the whole roof. That took forever. The car again was in the shop somewhere between 3 and 4 months. That again gave us more carrying costs of about $6,500 to $7,000 that we had to pay, even though the car was not rentable and it was just literally sitting in the shop. That puts us right past year 1. So in the first year, we were spending more money, literally just keeping the car in compliance with loan payments, insurance, so on and so forth, but literally actually losing money on the vehicle. So this is an important lesson because it wasn't the actual maintenance that was killing us. Because when you're buying a car like this, you're like, oh, the maintenance is gonna crush me, right? Tires, brakes, those things can add up, but you're really worried about major repairs. We thought we were gravy because, well, we got warranty on the car, everything's gonna be good. The downtime is essentially what wrecked the whole deal on this car. By the time I did the real math on year 1, this car ended up taking a net loss of about $2,800, when in reality, it was supposed to net us about $47,000 in profit. And that was not including the depreciation of the vehicle that we also took a big hit on. Now, the reason that number came out to what it did is because we had to perform some other maintenance on it as well. People were beating on the car, so tires, brakes, the car was really just a waste of time. Here are the lessons that I took away from this AMG GT purchase. The first one being, never buy this car on a best case month. Buy it on the worst case scenario and the worst case months, because before you know it, when growing a large fleet, you're gonna run into the worst case scenario more than one time. Also, sexy doesn't always rent better. It's just gonna cost more when it breaks. Run the maintenance numbers specific to the make and model, and make sure you deeply think about downtime on the vehicle before anything else. Now, let's get on to car number 2. This one is arguably worse. Car number 2 was the shiny object purchase. This one hurts a lot because in reality, I actually knew better. This car was the 2023 Corvette C8 that I purchased for $79,000. I'll be straight with you. I didn't buy this car necessarily because the numbers worked, but because I also wanted to drive it. I told myself it was gonna print on Turo. I told myself the premium of the C8, because it was still a newer vehicle in the market, was going to allow me to charge a more premium rate. And of course, I told myself, because I had a few of them already on consignment in the fleet, well, this is mine, so I'm gonna get to drive it too. That right there is the most expensive sentence in the English language for anyone that's running a rental fleet. Now, here's what happened. What nobody tells you about the Corvette is that even though it's a Chevy, nothing about it comes at Chevy prices. Anything from purchasing the car to tires, brakes, spark plugs, transmission flushes, all of the regular maintenance on this car can become so expensive, pretty much as expensive as a really, really high-end luxury vehicle or exotic car. Now, I had a few of them in the fleet at the time on consignment, so I did understand that maintenance was pretty expensive, but not having owned it, I always saw the profit from the vehicles and never the actual maintenance on the vehicles. So when the maintenance bills came our way, they turned out to be very, very expensive. And we just got super unlucky with the car as well. We got a ton of bad renters in it, which was partially due to our fault. But nonetheless, that just accelerated the type of maintenance we had to do on the car, tires, brakes, and things of that nature. And this car came with a valve body transmission issue, which of course, just a few months after purchase, got sent off to Chevy, sat in there for 4 months while we continued to make the payment. So we actually ended up breaking even on this car, but only due to one thing, and that's because we were able to lemon law the vehicle because it had such low mileage and it sat in the shop for so long, so it qualified for California lemon law. We were able to file a lemon law claim on this vehicle, and that is really the only reason that we ended up breaking even. Otherwise, we probably would have taken a loss unless we would have continued to run it for a long time, and that car would have gotten the crap beat out of it. Another thing to note is we had a few of them on the fleet, so it was actually competing with other vehicles that were on our fleet, literally directly competing with other Corvette C8s. That just kind of stretched the margins for all of the C8s on our fleet. Had it been the only one, it probably would have done pretty well. But even on the Turo instance alone, the reason we bought this car is because the prices started to drop. So we're like, oh, okay, this is a good purchase now. So we bought the car. Everyone on Turo thought the same exact thing. And so C8s on Turo were going as low as $120, $150 a day, which is absolutely ridiculous. And you cannot outpace the maintenance at those prices. So this is the lesson that we took away from the 2023 Corvette C8, and that is the cars that you want to drive and the cars that make money on Turo can be two completely different things. So this was a hard lesson in itself. And the day I started separating these two things in my head, my margins increased dramatically. So if you are starting a Turo or private car rental business based on what you're hyped to pull up in, stop right now. Sometimes the boring C300 Mercedes or the Volkswagen Tiguan are going to make much more net profit over the course of 1 to 2 years than something fancy that you just want to pull up in, but you have no idea about the market, especially if you're doing Turo and Turo only. But now, let's talk about car number 3. This is the worst one because this is not even a luxury or an exotic vehicle. By the way, before I get into the third vehicle, if you've been interested in starting your own private car rental business outside of Turo, or you're looking help for your processes within Turo and scaling your existing fleet, I made a whole training that you can watch the full breakdown on, and that's gonna be sitting on the screen right now. All right, car number 3, and this is the worst one. This one is the I should have known better purchase. The third car is a boring 2021 Subaru Ascent that I purchased for $21,000. And this one is the worst, not because of the purchase price, but because I spotted so many red flags about this purchase and I still decided to go through with it. I'm gonna walk you through the exact excuses that I told myself that this was gonna be a good purchase. Because I guarantee you, if you're early in this business, you're gonna be making these same excuses for yourself and potentially purchase a car that's a complete disaster. And just maybe this video will save you from those mistakes. I wanna start by saying I had a pre-approval to purchase a vehicle from a specific dealership. They did not have the inventory I want, and I was pushed this vehicle by a salesman, but because I was antsy to get a car that day, because I already had a renter lined up for it, I pretty much just pulled the trigger on whatever they gave me that I thought was an okay deal. So I just started talking myself through all the following lies. Here are the lies and copes that I told myself when purchasing this vehicle after getting pushed on by the salesman. The first lie was, well, this car only has 98,000 miles on it. This car should last me at least 150 to 200,000 miles. Worst case scenario, I'll buy the extended warranty if I need to. Second lie was, well, if I do have to pay for repairs outside of the included warranty that I'm gonna maybe purchase, it shouldn't be too bad, right? It's an economy car. The third lie was, well, I'm just gonna put it in Turo. It's gonna pay itself anyways, so who cares? Let's just get it on the fleet and get it generating revenue. The fourth lie was, well, worst case, I just sell it and end up breaking even. Every one of those was wrong. The first sign that something was off after driving the car off the lot was a week later, right after its first rental. The front headlight assembly went out completely. To replace that headlight was $2,000. The extended warranty didn't cover it. However, I did get lucky because I'd only put a small amount of mileage on it and it was still within a certain time frame that the dealer offers, kind of like a full money back guarantee. They went ahead and paid for the headlight replacement, but that was the first red flag. 2 months after that, I started noticing when driving the car to the wash or delivery that there was this humming sound coming from the front of the car, and I thought, well, whatever, the car's not shaking, it's driving fine, so I ignored it. By month 4, the car would start to shake a little bit when driving, and it was just kind of starting to act a little bit funny. I knew something wasn't right. Then came the point of no return. All of a sudden, the car's battery died. I had to replace it. There was some sort of circuit issue that ended up costing me about a $1,200 maintenance bill. Got it back on the road. The shaking, the humming was still all present. Well, a week later, the car started spewing oil and the transmission was going crazy in the car. So I took it to the dealer with the extended warranty. Turns out there was a severe transmission failure. They replaced the whole transmission. That would have been a $10,000 repair had I not gotten the extended warranty. All in, purchase price, payments, maintenance, depreciation, all of the fun stuff, I probably lost about $6,000 on this car. Now, this may not seem like a high number to you, but if we're talking relative to purchase price of the vehicle, especially if you're counting that transmission that I luckily had covered, that is a very, very high percentage of the value of the vehicle that I actually ended up losing. It was also an economy car, so obviously it required a lot more turnarounds and a lot more labor just to keep it running. The lesson that I took away from the Subaru is that all the information was there for me to see in clear writing. Also, low key, before I went to the dealer, because I negotiated all this over the phone before I went and signed paperwork, I did a quick research and I did notice that there was a lot of forums talking about the kinds of issues that Subarus have, and a lot of them were transmission complaints. And people were talking about a lot of repairs that ended up costing them more than $5,000 to get the cars back on the road. And people in my circle who had dealt with Subarus also warned me about this car. I overrode every signal because I emotionally was already invested in this vehicle because I didn't have enough cars to fill demand, and I wanted to get that car that day to get it out on a rental. And that's the real lesson from all these 3 cars. This brings me to, if you zoom out on all of these 3 mistakenly purchased vehicles, the same issues show up in different costumes. Do you notice what's actually missing? I never bought a car. I bought a story that I was telling myself about a car. So after these 3 nightmares, I built a checklist. Every single car that goes on my fleet now, including vehicles that I guide people to purchase for vehicles that are on consignment, they have to pass this checklist. So this is my 5-point pre-buy checklist. The first one being, what is the real occupancy of this vehicle in my market? Not Turo's average, not the seller's pitch, not some YouTuber in a different city. Pull competitions within 20 to 25 miles of vehicles within my area, same makes and models and year ranges, or as close as you can possibly get. Second point is the worst case maintenance scenario. What is the worst case expense I might expect on this vehicle repair-wise that I can cover without having to liquidate some other assets or injecting personal money or taking out a loan? The third point, what is my all-in monthly cost? That's gonna include payment, insurance, maintenance reserve, cleaning, Turo's fees. If the worst case occupancy doesn't cover these numbers, do not buy the vehicle. The fourth point, what is the demand profile of the renter on this car? Who's gonna book this car? Is it people who wanna floor it on the weekend, race it and take it to car meets? People that are gonna consistently smoke in the car or conduct criminal activity? If that's gonna be the common trend amongst the people renting this particular car, I do not buy it. Of course, you can't always predict every single renter, but if that seems to be the majority of activity that tends to happen in these type of vehicles, don't buy it. Point number 5, what is the exit liquidity on this car? If I had to sell this car in 90 days, what would I actually lose? If the answer is more than 15%, that car better be exceptional in every other category. Every car that I've purchased since creating this checklist has been very profitable for me. Every single one. The 3 cars that I talked about in this video are cars that I purchased before that checklist. That's the cost of learning this business without a system. That's why I'm making this video. There's also obviously a lot of other mistakes that you can make across many other categories within the business, but this was just particular to vehicles that you purchase and the selection process that you go through. So look, the car rental business is genuinely the best business that I've ever ran. When I exited, we were at 60 plus vehicles doing $150,000 or more per month with about 30 to 35% margins on the revenue. But that kind of growth is built on a base of mistakes that I paid for in cash worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, 3 of which you just watched. So if you got value from this video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more on building a real car rental business in 2026. And check out the next video that's showing on your screen right now. In that video, I go over the mistakes that you can avoid when starting your car rental business. Thank you again for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you in the next video.